Before I jump into this week's podcast, I just want to give you a really quick reminder to sign up for the upcoming free 5-day activated alignment series. You can go to my website, laurelrutledge.com, and click on the alignment triangle and get registered. You will get an email with a question every day, 5 days, and then I will be going live that evening for about 30 minutes. That's not mandatory, but if you choose to join, you can, to answer any questions, give additional insight, etc. So again, that is the 5-day free activated alignment series. Let's get you really clear on who you are and where you are so that you can begin to move into empowered action. So laurelrutledge.com, go to the alignment triangle and get registered. I hope to see you on Monday, February the 28th, 2022. Take care. This week on the podcast, I want to talk about asking for what you want. There is this whole idea that we have not because we ask not. And yet asking is very difficult for many of us. And this is a particularly important topic because when I've said before many times, it's not unkind to be clear, usually that is talking about setting expectations for others or making sure that others understand your expectations. But that clarity also applies to asking, not only for help, but for what we want. So here's what happens. When we're in an organization and we are beginning our career, it's easier for us to ask questions, something we don't understand, some additional support that we need, etc. It's just easier because everyone's expectations are that we just don't know, so we're going to ask questions. But the further you go along in your career and the higher you go up in the organization, something happens and all of a sudden it becomes taboo to ask. Not only to ask for what you want, but definitely to ask for help. It becomes taboo. And what's interesting about that is that's all caught up in ego. Because if you're really leading people, if you are really moving towards a goal, one of the key pieces of that is asking for help. It's asking for support. It's asking for information that is needed in order for you to achieve the goal. It is asking. So at some point along the way, we turn asking from a need and an expectation into an indication of a lack of skill or incompetence. And nothing could be further from the truth. If you think about your teams when you're a leader or the projects that you're on, you have to ask your team members to perform certain duties. You have to look at all of your spheres of influence and ask for support. You need the communications people to put out communication or to help you work through that communication. You need the finance people for the budget. You need your HR people to help get the team going. You need all of these things to attach to what you're trying to do, and you need to ask for those. But when you get into the project, if something becomes unclear or if the expectations change, right? If something changes in the environment and you need to seek more clarity, somehow that becomes taboo. That it's a bad thing as a leader to seek additional clarity. Now, in full transparency here, I have no problem putting a pause on and say, let's revisit that and get clear. None whatsoever. The reason being this, when we have those conversations and I'm really working with the team and saying, okay, where are we trying to go? What are we trying to do? And we start moving. Once we have those discussions and we make a decision, I am moving. I am moving forward. We are making it happen. I am leaving open opportunity for additional information. I'm not just locked down, but we are putting activity into the thing we said we wanted. So if along the line, somewhere in the middle or close to the end, while we're almost done with it, all of a sudden there is a, maybe we needed to, or I wish we had, I get a little salty because we had that conversation in the beginning. We talked about this. We got everything on the table. I confirmed multiple times and I got my people making an effort, right? And so that whole idea of asking and making sure you're clear is critical if you're not going to waste time. Because if you don't have time to do it right the first time, what makes you think you have time to do it over? Ask the question. And the further you get up in the organization, it's not so much about asking for assistance in some kind of technical thing. Although as leaders, you need to admit where your gaps are and then hire people or bring people onto your projects that fill your gaps. But at the leadership level, it's really more about overall strategic clarity or overall positioning clarity. It's more strategic than it is tactical, but it's still critical for you to ask for clarity, to seek understanding, to seek common ground, because words matter. And so it's important that you get really, really clear on what it is you're trying to do. And in order to do that, you have to ask the question. You have to be curious enough about what's going on and what the outcomes are that you are willing to, depending on your culture, to potentially submit to concerns about your competence for the sake of clarity. That's what leaders do. And if you've got a culture where seeking clarity is seen as incompetence, then that's a whole other discussion that we probably need to get on the phone and talk about and help you develop some strategies to fix that or to get out of that situation. Now, the business piece makes a lot of sense, right? You got performance, you got to make sure you're getting things done. You got to meet the goals that have been outlined, all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit easier to make sure you regroup to ask. However, when you are thinking about maybe building your own business, or you're thinking about doing something that's in a nonprofit or something where you're really by yourself, that takes on a whole new meaning. We have not because we ask not. And that gets really into a whole idea of trust. The whole idea of, do we deserve what we're asking for? Do I even really know what I want? How do I ask? Should I ask? Man, I don't know if that's really a good thing to ask. All of that head trash starts coming up when it's time for us to ask for something. And if you are an entrepreneur, if you are starting a business, you've got something to sell. A service, a product, an idea, whatever it is. So you have to ask someone to buy it. That seems like a fundamental truth. The challenge is, how do you ask and when do you ask, right? People will buy, they will take action, but that's why they call it a call to action. There's so much noise. You have to ask people to do what you want them to do. Do you want them to click on something? Do you want them to buy something? Do you want them to read something? Do you want them to try on something? What is it that you want someone to do? And then ask them. The big challenge with this right now is, especially in the area of COVID, and so many of us have gone online, those of us who have left and started businesses, especially service businesses, and everyone's trying to sell everybody something. And I'm in that group too, right? I've got a business. I'm selling my services. And there's nothing more maddening for me than the fact that LinkedIn seems to have turned into this sleazy cold calls, pushy sales thing. I can't stand it. Let's connect so we can build relationships. Don't connect with me and then say, oh yeah, and buy my thing. And more important, don't have bots do it, because when I respond to you and say, I'm happy to connect, but I'm not in need of any services, and you send me something anyway, most of the time, because of the way it's written, I'm pretty sure it's a bot. It is not a person, but that still reflects on you and your integrity. And therein lies some of the challenge with asking. How do we learn to ask for what we want and what we need in a way that aligns with who we are, in the way we like to show up, in the way we like to engage? It's one of the challenges that you see with all of these people on social media saying, do this and you'll make $1 million. Do this and you'll have an 8-figure business. Do this and I built my 6 figures in 2 months. These are the little tricks of the trade that you need in order to have this fabulous life. One, you're seeing somebody's highlight reel, not behind the scenes. Two, you really don't know, unless you really followed them for a while, are you really going to be able to get what they say they can deliver? Because not everybody who says they can deliver actually delivers. But three, if you're not them, will their system really work for you? There's a system out there now around live launches and how you do that. And, it's 14 days of stuff. It's really insane. And it works really, really well. Really well. The person who came up with it has this amazing business and is continuously helping people build really good businesses with this process and with this method. It is so not what works for me. I know my energy, right? And being online for whatever period of time for 14 days in a row or whatever, and selling stuff and bonuses, and it's more than my energy can handle. Not only that, when I look at the people who really could benefit the most from my expertise, are they the people who can really be online at noon to do this? What is the ask? What is the thing that I'm asking people to buy? And more importantly, for me, how am I trying to serve? It turns it all upside down for me. I know that based on the experience that I have and the expertise that I've spent years of blood, sweat, and tears gaining, that I have an ability to help someone else not be in the same pain that I was in, to step with empowered action into their choices. I know this. I know it. I've had people tell me, I've got the receipts. And that person is not necessarily the person who's going to work with me is not necessarily the person who wants to be online for 9 days. They're not necessarily the person that wants the kind of hard sell and the bonus this and the sign up. That's not who they are. And there are billions of people in the world. And so it's okay that those aren't my people. I also know that because my whole goal is really to serve, to ensure that that person doesn't feel the same way I did, in particular, that Black women in corporate America don't feel the same way I did, that leading with service and leading with how I can support and how I can help is the way that I can then move someone into a call to action. It's not the other way around for me, because the other way around feels disingenuous. It feels sleazy. It feels snake oily for me. And that doesn't work. But I still have to ask. I have to ask people to do something. Sign up for my free 5-day alignment. Come to my masterclass. Apply for the Empowered Action Academy, right? You give people direction and invite them to work with you. If you're in an organization, you give people direction and you invite them to bring them their best selves to work. You invite them to bring their ideas and their expertise and their genius to that project. You make an offer and you invite people to participate. And by doing that and by serving first, by building that trust, you enable people to make that decision. But they're not going to be able to make the decision if you don't ask them to make it. If you don't set up an environment where every decision isn't pushed up to you, right? Where you're not just telling people and directing people what to do. You have to ask, and you have to give people an environment where they can ask. Your team should be able to trust you enough so they can ask you anything related to the project, right? Related to what's going on and related to expectations that you have set for them. Clarity is important. It's not unkind to be clear. So it's not unkind for the people who are looking to you for direction to ask you for clarity and for you to provide it. That's your role as the leader. And to provide an environment where they can ask the question. And you listen actively to what they're asking so that you can provide an appropriate answer. It is okay to ask people to support your effort, your business, to support your nonprofit, to support your cause. It is okay to ask, because if you don't ask, people won't do. It's okay to ask. And you have to ask in a way that is authentic to you, that is clear about what you're asking for and why, and what the benefit is not only to you, but what the benefit could, should, might be for them as they make an empowered choice of whether or not to support you. It is also okay to ask for the value that you believe you are delivering. Again, really clear, not ask for your value because you don't want to put a price tag on your value, but ask for the value of the service or the product that you are providing, the effort that you have put in, the expertise that you have used to build it. It is okay to ask. So if you take nothing else from this podcast this week, what is the thing that you are asking for? How can you trust yourself enough to be able to deliver so that you set up an environment for your teams that they can ask the question, that you set up relationships with all of those people in your different spheres of influence so you can ask for clarity and they can ask the same of you. so you can build a reputation of delivering value so that those folks that you want to support your business or your nonprofit or your cause feel like they can because they feel like they can trust you. Build the trust, deliver the value that you say you're going to deliver, and ask the question. Thank you so much for listening to the Rutledge Perspective this week. It is my pleasure to continue to be with you. I just am truly appreciative of all this time. I'd love to know what it is that keeps you from asking for support. Let's talk about it. We'll definitely be talking about it at some point on Fireside. Have a fantastic rest of your week. We'll talk to you soon. Bye. Before you go, have you heard the news? I am so thrilled and honored to announce that I'm going to be hosting a show on Fireside. It's going to be called the Rutledge Perspective Live Conversations, and I am launching in March, in particular on March the 3rd at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time during Women's History Month. And I'm so excited about that because that month, every week, the podcast episode is going to be with a group of the women that are in my village. And then the live conversation on that Thursday will be those women where you will get a chance to talk to them, talk to me. What I love is that we'll actually be able to interact and have a conversation and engage. So join me on Fireside. Go to firesidechat.com/Laurel Rutledge, all run together, and be sure to request access early, so that you have time to get in and kind of play around and then put on your alerts for the shows. So they will be Thursdays, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, starting March the 3rd. I can't wait to see you there. Bye. You've been watching The Rutledge Perspective. Thank you for tuning in. If we have given you a different perspective, or if you've learned something new that you hadn't thought about before, please subscribe to the Rutledge Perspective podcast where you get your favorite podcasts, and give us a like on iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher. We really appreciate it. And your feedback is important as well, as we use that to inform our next episodes. You can also head over to my website, laurelrutledge.com, and download a freebie called Where's My Mojo that can really help you get out of your rut or maybe talk you back off that ledge of frustration. You can also find previous episodes of the Rutledge Perspective on laurelrutledge.com. I really appreciate your tuning in. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.